Hello and welcome to the shop. In the search for pumpkins for Halloween, I found a local farm with a charming little store, and they do festivals, and the owner invited me to come and vend at some of their events over the season next year. And so I got to thinking about it and got to thinking what kind of things would market well at a farmer's market, essentially, or craft festival at a local farm. And I'm in the South. And, well, I don't know if you're familiar, but some brands of Mexican food sell things like mole sauce in a reusable little jar. You can also find reusable little jelly jars that you can use as like juice glasses or something. But what I use it for is as a biscuit cutter. My main complaint, though, is this is just not big enough. It's only just under 2.5 inches wide, so the actual biscuit is barely over 2 inches wide. And I always thought it'd be nice to have my biscuits be a little bit bigger. And I happen to have the right tool here to make custom biscuit cutters. Well, why aren't I doing that? It's a perfect product to go to a little farmer's market in the country. So today, I'm going to show you how to make a biscuit cutter. It's a simple project, doesn't take very long, but I think they'll be great sellers at a farmer's market. I've set up a stop block on my chop saw at 3 inches from the blade itself so that I can make multiple blanks. Captain Eddie Castellan over at the Worldwide Wood Turners at worldwidewoodturners.org says, I could turn anything if I can hold it. And one of the challenges for a project that's small like this is a accurate and repeatable way to hold it. And I think what we're going to try today is a waste block and double-sided tape. So first I need to put a tenon. This is a piece of end grain cherry left over from another project. I need to put a tenon on this end, and then we'll get it into a chuck, and that will be held. We'll face the other side, and we will use some double-sided tape for our little biscuit cutters. So you can see this has got a lot of cracks in it, which is why this is a waste block. It'll do just fine for holding a piece taped to the face. We'll double check with a edge of a scraper here. We're pretty flat. Maybe a little cupped in the middle. I might clean up these edges a little bit so that we have a good flat surface. That's pretty good. All right, we've got it all mounted up. I had a good seal. I'll let that sit for a minute. I don't think that's going to go anywhere, but I'm going to keep my tailstock up, at least while I get it round. Obviously, I'm going to have to take it away when I hollow my cutting portion of my biscuit cutter. But before I do that, there's an important step that I need to make sure I do not miss. One of the problems with using something like a little glass jar as a biscuit cutter is there's no relief for the air when you press it down, so it forces it around the cut dough and then creates a vacuum, and you have to shake out the dough to get the biscuit out. The solution is obviously to drill a relief hole. So this is going to be roughly an inch thick, maybe a little bit thicker. And what I'm going to do is just go ahead and put the hole in now before I turn the piece and hollow it. And the reason for that is when I am clearing the wood out and hollowing it on both the inside and the outside, if the hole is already there, I don't get much tear out. So I'm going to go about a third of the way out. This elm is very hard. And we need to go about an inch and a half just to make sure it's deep enough. And we need a little bit more. There we go. Now, I have an evacuation hole or an air hole. Once it's turned, that will be in the edge of the top of the cutter. And like I said, by doing it now and then turning after the hole is drilled, I'm going to avoid tear out as I'm finishing the outside of the piece. All right, we're right at 3 inches. A little bit less, but that's okay. I just want it bigger than those little glass jars. So we're going to go ahead and hollow. And this is to cut biscuits, so it really needs to be fairly thin, and I need to have a, for lack of a better word, a knife edge here. It's not going to be knife sharp. I will ease it a little with the sandpaper, but I need a good edge here. Remember, we're aiming for about an inch deep, so I'm going to set my vernier calipers to an inch. You can take this end, put it in, and you can see I'm about 3/4 of the way there. A little bit more than 3/4 of the way there. So 2 or 3 more passes, and I'll have this at depth, and I can come and work on the edge here that is going to be the cutting surface. Still a hair under an inch. We're going to take a couple more very fine shaving passes from the center out. Then we'll work this inside edge here. I'm having trouble getting light in here to see, so I'm going to pull out a little secret weapon. Obviously, the next step is sanding. This is a pretty good finish coming off the tool. I'll start at 220 grit. I'm just worried about the inside at the moment, but I can sand up to an inch on the outside and maybe a little past. So I'll do a little work out here, but mostly I'm just going to sand the inside and get my finish in there. I will be using Brad's Workbench abrasive or sanding paste, as well as the tongue wax. That way I get a good water resistant and food safe finish on there. I will also pay close attention to this edge, make sure I don't have any nicks or anything in here. I want it smooth. And this is very thin. We're looking at about at the base there, at the bottom of the base where it's the widest, that is 2/10 of an inch. But our little cutting edge here is 1/10 of an inch. So we get a nice thin side. It's going to make nice, perfectly round and deep, thick, 1 inch thick biscuits. Okay, we've sanded through 400 grit. Now we're going to apply some Brad's Workbench sanding paste. Just work it in. We've got a very nice clean edge here. Feels really good. Like I said, I sanded up. So I'm going to go ahead and do the abrasive and get this part of the outside done. Now, it's certainly not going to be the complete finish, but because I've still got to turn the top here. But we'll get the outer part done. I've got a good clean edge here. I'm pretty pleased with how this is turning out. Now this tongue wax has to sit for about a half an hour, but while it is setting so that the tongue oil begins to penetrate the wood, I can work on the outside and the handle. Ultimately, I will do a jam chuck to turn the very top part of the handle, but as far as the actual cutting part of this goes in the inside, this is complete except for buffing with a paper towel after about a half an hour. It's not going to hurt it to spin around while I'm working out here. Okay. So we're at about 1 inch of depth, so I want to make sure that I don't turn too close to that for my handle. So I want to make sure that I have a drop dead line, and I want to make sure it's past that inch. So right about there should do. I definitely don't want to turn beyond that line so that I do not break through the top of my scoop. Okay, we're getting tight in here, and this big 1/2 inch gouge is getting a little too big. So I'm going to do a little sharpening, and I'm going to use my 3/8 inch spindle gouge, which is perfectly safe to use as a detail tool. Has a round shaft, but that's going to allow me to get in there and get a nice small profile on the little knob or handle on the top of our biscuit cutter. I've got plenty of room down here on the base, so I'm not at risk at going through and encroaching, so I can take this down a little bit more. I've got at least 1/4 inch here, so I've got plenty of room, and I'm not quite into our air hole, our relief hole yet. So let me get this sharpened up and we will get in there. Okay, so our tape is coming loose, but we're done in here. So what I'm going to do is buff this real quick and bring the tailstock back up so I can finish the neck here. That's the part I'm really trying to stress on. And then we'll go ahead and reverse it, do a jam chuck, and finish it. Okay, that tape has moved too much. That's a fail on that tape. So we're going to go ahead and do a jam so that we can finish the outside. We'll bring the tailstock up until we absolutely have to get rid of it. I've got still some good thickness here, so I've got a good solid bottom or top, as it were. So we'll do a jam chuck and take care of this. We'll take the outer diameter here. Slow the lathe down. We'll just use this edge, touch it to the wood. That's our outside diameter, and we're going to sneak up on that so that we make sure we have a good tight jam. Okay, we are just a little bit too small, which is what we wanted. Closer. It'll probably be right at that line, but it's best because we need a good tight jam to take our time and work our way up to it. That's pretty nice. When I bring the tailstock up, that's going to be a good solid fit. Now, it's not a vacuum fit because I have that little evacuation hole. So I have to be conscious of that. If I needed a vacuum fit, I could probably put tape over it on the inside. I'm not really sweating it. I have plenty of room to bring my tailstock up. Okay, we have our tailstock with a slight amount of pressure. We're going to sharpen our tools. This elm is very hard. It's very, very hard. But I obviously need to fix this here. So I'm going to round that a little bit. I've got room. And so we'll get this all squared away and continue cutting the little knob, that handle at the top of our biscuit cutter. Okay, at this point, all we really need to do is sand. So we're going to use a paper towel to increase the pressure of our jam, but we're not going to go over 500 or 600 RPM again. That's tight. So since we got to blend this edge, we're going to go back to 180 grit, and we'll just sand it and clean up that little knob on the top there, and put our finish on it, let it sit for about a half an hour, buff it, and it will be done. All right, we're coming back to the final application of sandpaper at 400 grit. Then we will go to the Brad's Workbench sanding paste and the tongue wax. And once again, after you apply that tongue wax, you need to wait about a half an hour. Let the tongue oil begin to penetrate and polymerize before you come back and buff with a paper towel to get a nice final sheen with that carnauba wax and beeswax combination in the product. Now usually when I'm sanding, I clean between each grit with denatured alcohol so that I get a finer finish. I do not do that when I bring in the sanding paste, the Brad's Workbench sanding paste. I do not do that. There we go. And the reason why is because this paste is a friable abrasive, meaning it gets finer and finer the more you work it. So it's going to incorporate that 400 grit sawdust or sanding dust and just continue to break it down finer as it works on the wood. So as always, just rub it in. Make sure you get some good coverage. You can actually feel it starting to get a little bit smoother as you hand rub it. I imagine you could probably, if you had the patience, just use this for completely by hand for application. I haven't tried it, but I bet you can. So we started at a slow speed. I'm at about 420 RPM, and just work it. Right now, we're really just making sure that we've got it in all the nooks and crannies. And as you can see, it's removing material. So I'm going to flip to a cleaner paper towel, and I'm going to increase the speed a little bit so that abrasive can begin to work and really start breaking down and get finer and finer and finer. Still removing material. I'll go to a clean section of paper towel and kick my speed up. I'm at about 840 RPM. We're going to kick it up to about 1,000 RPM. Turn our paper towel inside out, come to a completely clean section. Usually by the time that I'm at 1,000 RPM with Brad's, it's done. It's done its work. And you can see I'm not removing any more material. It's finished. It's done. Oh, that is beautiful. Really like this elm a lot. This is a nice little piece of elm. Very, very hard wood. Now we come in with the tongue wax, and like I said, we rub this on, walk away, sweep up your floor, sharpen your tools, rearrange your, I don't know, do something, go have lunch, get another cup of coffee, whatever you want to do, but give that tongue oil the opportunity to penetrate. Now remember, that rim I already finished, so I'm not real worried about that. but you want that tongue oil to have the opportunity to penetrate and begin the polymerization process. Now we'll take a, make sure we get it down in there, and I'll take a pipe cleaner or something and make sure that the hole is thoroughly covered and sealed. I am not worried. The application of this, again, is biscuits. I am not worried about any kind of bacterial issues in that hole, because the tongue oil from the tongue wax is in there, it is penetrating, and it will seal it. But more so, they've done studies with wooden cutting boards, and they've found that if any bacteria gets on the surface of the cutting board, the wood absorbs it, draws it in, and the surface stays clean. And since the bacteria is so deep, that it doesn't affect any food touching it. But again, this is a biscuit cutter. You're not going to be rubbing it with chicken, with raw chicken or anything like that. So it's a very safe application. As always, if you have any questions about Brad's Workbench products, contact Brad. He'll be happy to talk with you, provide MSDS sheets, the whole 9 yards. He's done extensive research into the safety of his products, and I stand behind them 100%. I use them on every piece I make. We'll be back to buff this and show it in action.